all set. Okay, very good. Well, thank you, everybody. Welcome to the Board of Education meeting, Monday, September 17th. Thank you for coming to the high school. This is going to be our new venue. Aside from being in an actual school building, one of the advantages is we can live stream the meeting out to both the township and the borough at the same time. At the previous meetings, we could only live stream out to the township, and the borough had to wait, a day or so before it was posted online. So now we could stream it out live. It may take a little while to work out the kinks, but we're going to give it a shot. So again, welcome. So just quickly, a little housekeeping. In accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975, I wish to announce that the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of the public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of the Act, the School Districts of the Chatham's Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, place thereof posted at the Board of Education administrative offices, sent to the clerks of the Chatham Borough, the Chatham Township, posted at the Library of the Chathams, the Chatham Courier, the Daily Record, the Star Ledger, and TAP. Mr. DeQuilla, would you mind taking attendance?
Here.
Sorry.
Here. Here.
Here. Excellent. Very good. I don't have any additional board comments other than welcome back to the school year. You okay?
Do we have a flag?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Thank you. I thought you were having a heart attack, Peter. You're grabbing your chest. Well, that's a way to start a meeting. If who's ever able to stand, if you could join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Thank you. Sorry, I don't have any additional president's comments at this time. We're going to move straight over to the administrative reports. Dr. LaSuso, would you mind taking it from here?
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Weber. And welcome everyone to this historic evening of broadcasting from the Media Center. We will work out the kinks. We'll be a work in progress for a few meetings while we get everything settled. I know I want a little more natural light on my face. So we'll see what we can do, new bulbs, etc. But we'll get to it, and we're in capable hands with the Pulse crew, and it's good to be here in the school. So we're off and running. The school year has begun. We've had about 2 weeks now of class, and school has been in session. It's been a relatively smooth start overall. We've had a couple of hiccups here and there. Our biggest challenge was within our transportation department. As many of the board members know, we had essentially successive resignations from our key position, our key transportation coordinator, in the span of about 60 days. And that created some disruption in the department. It made for a difficult first week of school, and we needed to have all hands on deck in our central office, particularly in human resources and in the business office. And one employee in particular who used to serve in the role of transportation coordinator really stepped up and got us through the worst patch of it. We're still dealing with some residual issues, but we're working through them, and we're in a better place now than we were 2 weeks ago today. Our enrollment has settled into about 4,125 kids, about 1,315 or so kids at the high school. So we think that will be more or less stable until October 15th, which is the date that the state requires us to upload our enrollment count, which becomes the official enrollment for the year, even though it wavers every day after that. And then finally, just we'll remind everyone from the last meeting, if you weren't here, we are in the throes of revising our safety and security plans like we are required to do on an annual basis. I've been in discussions with the Borough and Township Police. Both chiefs plan to attend on October 1st, our board meeting, to discuss anything that we feel comfortable discussing in public. We can't disclose a lot of the details behind safety and security within the district, but they will discuss anything that they feel comfortable discussing. And of course, we'll take any questions about Class 3 officers and how Class 3 officers are utilized in the municipalities and school districts that are utilizing them now. So that's the overall report.
That's October 1st.
That
Colin, can I ask you a question, Mr. Pierce? Are you able to hear us back there? Yes. You're able to hear Dr. LaSusa, no problem? Okay. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Okay.
But
Another thing to work on.
I know. I just wanted to make sure everybody could hear. If you can't, well, it's not amplifying is the problem. It's picking up our microphones for the feed, but it's not. There's no amplification. But I just wanted to double check. But Mr. Pierce says he can hear.
We can
You're all
just speak louder.
okay.
Yes, we'll speak louder.
Thank you.
So as of now, that is the report, the general status of the schools, and we're excited to be back in black.
And just real quick on the October 1st police chiefs meeting, that is going to be held during our regular Board of Ed at 7:30.
7:30 p.m. right here.
Right here at the high school. Perfect.
Can you make an effort to get that information out? Get that information out to the
You have it
community?
muted now.
Now I muted.
No, I thought.
No, I have a
all
green
of them
light.
moved.
Light is good.
Can we make an effort to get that
Yes.
information out as much as we can, so as many people who wish to attend can come to that meeting to hear firsthand what the recommendations are?
Sure.
Quick question, Mike. I know in recent weeks you spent a lot of time in sessions and safety sessions with law enforcement officials, going over new protocols for keeping schools safe. And I would imagine there were representatives from a great many school districts at these sessions as well. Do you sense that other districts have a very heightened sense of awareness in light of the last couple of years? So in other words, we're not just experiencing this here.
Correct. Yes. There are multiple factors converging right now. So one was that Governor Christie signed into law the Class 3 officer position at the end of 2016. So even without the events nationally of the past year, many districts were excited to explore the opportunity to
I know,
bring
yeah.
police in, but without such a cost.
The neighboring towns have been taking.
Yes.
have
Then
been
we had the
employing-
national events last year that caused all of us to reflect further. And then parallel to both of those factors was that the state was implementing for the first time the school safety specialist requirements that had been part of a prior law in early 2017. So those three things have kind of brought all districts together, talking about safety and security, trying to improve their practices, update what they're doing, and so forth.
All right, great, thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. LaSousa on any of those topics? And just as a look ahead, October 15th, we're going to be talking about the demographics.
Yes,
Okay.
also.
Just to look ahead in case folks are interested in that as well. I know there's a lot of anticipation and a lot of thought that our enrollment is going to go down significantly, but there's other factors at play that may force it to actually go north. Moving on to the business administrator's report, Mr. DeQuilla.
Just a quick construction update. All of the roof work that was done over the summer at the high school, Southern Boulevard, and middle school has been completed. The architect just has to do a punch list. The Lafayette kitchen was completed on time. Contractor did a fantastic job, and the kitchen was ready for the start of school. Southern restrooms, the bathrooms were ready for the start of school. At Milton, the temporary certificate of occupancy was obtained on Monday to September 10th. So the classrooms were used as of Monday afternoon through that. So we just had to go through a hiccup of the first 2 days of school without those 4 rooms. And on the middle school, again, the contractor did a great job. Everybody seems to be very pleased with the STEM classrooms. And that TCO was obtained Friday afternoon, the 7th. And those classrooms were set up on that Saturday and used as of the next week of school. The auditorium, we're just waiting for the seats to come in. The anticipated delivery is October 23rd. And as soon as the seats are installed, then the auditorium will be up and ready for use. On the central office, the brickwork is complete, and the contractor is supposed to have started on the windows last week, but we're still waiting for that to begin. They started digging for the relocation of the water line today, and once that's complete, then they can relocate the gas line. Their anticipated completion is November 1st, and they're way behind schedule, and we keep pushing them to move faster. And for the CHS auditorium, the planning meetings have started, so they're working on all the specifications. So that yes, the middle school auditorium. The planning meetings have started, so the architect is in process of getting those plans ready so that project can go out to bid. And hopefully construction start December or January.
When will the bids go out? November timeframe?
At the rate they're going, probably end of October in November. So construction will probably start January. Or hope to start January based on bids.
Based on the high school auditorium, that seems somewhat aggressive. There was a tremendous amount of time in the planning phase prior to going out to bid, and I know we've learned quite a bit from the high school auditorium. It just seems aggressive.
I did not attend the first meeting, and I know they're trying to put the second one together, and there are a lot of things that the middle school auditorium is a little simpler because it doesn't have as much, I guess, the acoustical work on the sides of the auditorium as the high school did.
Okay.
But we will follow the realistic timetable.
Okay, very good. And you said you have TCOs at the middle school, STEM Labs, and Milton Avenue.
Correct.
When is the T going away?
At the Milton Avenue, the contractor is doing the one bit of work on Wednesday, the 17th, since there is no class. He has to do something, make an adjustment to the fire dampers, and then that could be inspected. So hopefully we should have the CO by the end of the week. For the middle school, they were just waiting for the building office to get the appropriate official paperwork from the Morris County Soil Conservation about the soil, which has already been done and came out this week, so that should be coming soon.
Okay, very good.
Can I just ask a quick question about the high school? So I may have missed this. Do we have use of the stage and we have use of the facility, just not seating? So play practice, things can occur in that venue.
Yes, that was the key part of
That's it, I
getting a
just got it.
TCO for the high
TCO,
school
okay.
auditorium.
We missed it,
So
sorry.
that the two offices and the lobby could be used, and that basically they could play with the sound system,
Okay.
and the play practice can go on. You just really can't have anybody sit and watch
Same here.
anything.
Okay, got it, thank
But
you.
there's a tremendous amount of new equipment, the rigging, the sound. I mean, it looks
Yes.
phenomenal, but it's going to be some
Yeah,
learning
all that training has been done on all the equipment, so they can go in and practice and do whatever they need to do.
Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Mike?
Oh, yeah, no, I'm sure there's a few folks that have questions.
You go first.
No, go ahead, Mike. Mike, you go.
Could you give us an update on how we're situated with HVAC? Back to school night, at least in the schools that I were in, some of those classrooms were pretty stuffy, and it was probably about 100 degrees on the first day of school. Summer's not over yet, but do we have adequate cooling and?
All of
for
the
all the
classrooms either have room air conditioners or regular air conditioning units. The one thing you do have to remember is that when I think it was the first week of school or the second week of school, whenever the temperature outside is 100, most AC units are not designed to handle 100 degrees. They're meant to handle approximately 80 degrees. And when you add probably 30 parents in a room, that is 3,000 degrees that you put in a classroom, not counting the teacher. So I don't think, unless we prepared.
So we don't have any that are not working at all?
No, they were all working. There were some that had service calls, and our maintenance department, including our head of buildings and grounds, was out on servicing everything we could. I just think that if it's 100 degrees outside, it's kind of unrealistic to think you're going to have 72 degrees inside. The units are just not meant to work that hard and that long. But
I will say, Mike, the first week of school, we did have some units down. We had some here at the high school, Lafayette. Southern had at least one classroom. So the day before school began for students, I had emailed all of the principals, let them know to keep their eye on the conditions. We also had a main office that wasn't working. And to rotate classrooms if they needed to, relocate some classes to places that were conditioned, like a media center. So the worst day was really the first day of school, and after we got through that day, the temperatures were not quite as bad.
Okay, thank you.
While we're on the topic of facilities, I just want to take this opportunity to put a rumor to rest that's been floating around on social media about whether or not there is enough space at the high school for students during the block lunch period. I spent this past several days in the high school during lunch, Thursday, Friday, and today. You can all rest assured, there is more than plenty of seating. There were in excess of, 50 empty seats in the main cafeteria. I counted on Thursday probably 40 empty seats in the C gym. I saw 5 kids sitting on the floor in the A gym that were playing cards, so clearly they were sitting on the floor by choice. Nobody was being bullied into being shoved on the floor and told they couldn't sit at a table. We have more than adequate space. So there are lots of people out there who are questioning why we all have lunch at the same time. We have this thing called block scheduling because when you're in high school, you're no longer in middle school, you're no longer in elementary school, and sometimes freshmen are in classes with seniors, are in classes with juniors or sophomores, and they're mixed. So the best way for us to ensure that teachers are available, that labs can be done during lunchtime, and that students can all be in mixed classes is to have lunch at the same time. There is no issue with seating. So I know it's been floating around. I know people are speculating. Anybody is more than welcome to come to the high school. I spoke with Darren Groh with advance notice to observe, to take a look. If they have questions, please reach out to the administration. Don't make assumptions. This stuff just gets so out of control, and a lot of these people that are commenting actually don't know the facts. So pick up the phone and make a phone call and ask. Come to the board meetings. As we can see, there aren't a ton of people here. So for those of you that are here, thank you for coming. But everybody has the opportunity to get the proper information if they go through the right avenues, and Facebook is not it. So I just encourage everybody, if you have questions, please ask the administration, call the school. We have an open door policy. Anybody can come and observe at any time. There is more than plenty of space for everybody to have lunch.
And just to dovetail off what Ann said, and oftentimes when someone makes an assumption or things are said, it's tagged to something else they don't necessarily agree with. This board had to make a decision to build an additional central office space. We had to do that a few months ago based on something that happened with another building that housed our special ed department. And we had to take a look at the space we had and what we were going to temporarily. And when we moved our special ed offices up to Myersville Road, it was said out loud, it was a temporary solution to what we could look at to see how we could house that department. After looking more carefully at our space and what our needs are, it was determined by this board that a central office building would be the best solution, first to have our special ed offices in adequate space, and second, to make sure that our central office was located closer to our buildings and in more comparable space. For me as a board member, when I was sworn in, it's a profound responsibility for the safety of every single student, staff member, and that includes our central office. A few months back, we came upon a situation where we had to secure our buildings. We were unable to secure the municipal building in the township, and much of the difficulties we were facing from a safety standpoint was directed at the central office. I don't think this board, and those of us who sat on the board at the time, some of us were not on the board, would ever want to be in that position again. By having our central office located on our school grounds, we have the ability to protect all our staff, including our central office, to the best of our ability. When somebody's not happy about a cafeteria space, to say, why don't we tag our central office to that space, that's not a solution. Again, make informed comments, come check out what we have here. I stood behind the central office then, I stand behind it now, and I just wish it could get open sooner so that we can have a more consolidated space for our staff that is closer to our schools. And even from an educational standpoint, I think it's going to be better to have our professionals closer to each building, visible on the ground, seeing the wonderful things happening in all our schools all the time, and not have to take a trip to get there. So that's just my statement.
I'll tag on to Michelle. I think the central office building here allows professionals like Karen, Beth, Mike to be on site, to not waste time, to be resources for all the teachers available, accessible, and it just makes things smoother. And that's just a side effect, a positive side effect of a tough decision we all had to make. Going back to the lunchroom, I had 3 kids go through the high school. They all graduated. None of them are scarred. None of them had any issues. It seems like this issue keeps turning up like a bad penny. It was brought up before I was on the board. It was brought up well before I was on the board with James, with my son Bill, and my daughter Mary. So I'm not surprised. You'll probably hear about it again next year. Good luck.
How
about the left side of the room? A little quiet over here. Everybody good over here? Mary, Mike, Lotta? No issues? Okay. Any other questions for Peter or anything related to facilities or finance? Or facilities, sorry. Excellent. Okay. Very good. We're going to move on. I'd like to make a motion to pass the minutes for the August 27th meeting. Sorry about that. Public and executive session.
Second.
Peter, was Mike the only one not here? Okay. Thank you. I thought it was a little light on the left. Okay. Would you mind?
The public session, executive session minutes of August 27th. Mr. Gilfillan? Mr. Arnick?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny? Mr. Ryan? Mr. Valenti? And Ms. Weber? Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Passes 7-0-2.
I'm just going to jump back in the agenda to committee reports and then liaisons. I wanted to do it a little out of order today. So the hour's getting late. Just trying to move it along. It is throwing me off, but I like it. Committee reports, Ms. Kenny on personnel.
We have not met since the last meeting.
But we've been kicking that can down the road, so when are we meeting? Okay. October 29th. Is there an opportunity to meet sooner? Could we make that happen? Because we actually do have a topic we want to talk about.
Sure.
Are you okay with that, Lotta?
Yeah.
Because we've all been talking about, it's just been getting bumped because of other priorities, but if we can free up time. Curriculum, Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes, we met just prior to this meeting. We discussed the district testing report as well as we did a textbook approval for American Sign Language. Talked about an overnight field trip that the French students are taking, that they have taken annually. And Ms. Chase just gave us an update on some current happenings around the district. And we are meeting again, I'm not sure when. October 10th.
So if we have to bump
I'll be there.
Karen,
Why can't we do it the same night?
or the same
That
night,
would be great.
even if we did it at 5:30, 6:30, 7:30. Okay, yeah, whatever works. Thank you. Finance and facilities, Mr. Gilfillan?
Yes, we met on September the 4th. We discussed a number of different issues. First, the wrestling program, which we kind of delivered a policy guidance in terms of the amount of people that each individual sport or supported club has to have inside of it in order for us to fund it. There was some continued efforts for the high school program to support wrestling. They had a kind of a drop-dead date. I'm not quite sure, to come up with a certain number of wrestlers in order for us to support this program going forward. I believe they had something maybe last Friday.
There was a meeting last Friday.
They were still waiting for Bill's feedback on that. We did, in staying in kind of our tradition of funding programs as they gain what we believe to be solid footholds within the Chatham community, we did decide to fund up to $16,000 for the sailing programs. This is going to take care of the coaching for the fall and the spring. I don't see Dan here. He'd be a very happy person. We discussed advertising revenue, which is something that we've all been talking about in terms of selling ad space within the athletic complexes of Chatham. Right now, we are going to do our best to work alongside the booster clubs, letting them know that avenue is now open, that it is supported by the Board of Education to sell ad space. As you guys all know, we had talked about a situation when we moved from our previous healthcare plan onto the SHIP, that there was some wordage within the agreement that was that led to some issues in terms of repayment to our doctors. We had talked about a significant dollar number, just to let you know that's coming in drastically below we thought our potential exposure was, so it really, in the end, is going to be no skin off our back. So if anyone had worried about that in terms of the dollar figure, no need to worry about it. We did continue to talk about the activity fees, and the fact maybe we upped them last time. We're going to continue to offer assistance to residents in town who have need. We continue to talk about the additional state aid figure and what we're going to do with those dollars. And then just last but not least, we did almost finalize our transferred or capital reserve at the end of the year. As you guys all know, I think 2 meetings ago, we approved a figure up to $1.5 million, so it's nothing to discuss. And we meet again probably sometime next month.
Does anybody have any questions for October 15th? Any questions for Matt on any of that report? Some of it we've been talking about for several meetings, so a lot of it's not new. No additional questions? Excellent. Moving on to policy and planning, Mr. Arnott?
This past Wednesday, we had to update several policies as per Strauss-Esme, and included in those are, just updating some wording in the Anti-Discrimination Practices Act, athletic competition, medical exams prior to participation in a sport. We also discussed a new policy and regulation 5561, use of physical restraint and seclusion techniques for students with disabilities. We did a first and second reading, first reading of that. Updating Strauss-Esme language for procurement procedures for school nutrition. One that's a little bit more tangible for most people, we also, policy number 2431.8, varsity letters for interscholastic extracurricular activities. If you have students who are involved in an extracurricular activity in our school district which involves competition, substantial time competition versus other schools, districts, etc., you will be eligible for a varsity letter. So it's not just, football, field hockey, etc. There we go.
Excellent. I know. Thank God Sal's been busy working. I know. Well, we could talk about it more if you have questions, because those are all up on policy at the regular agenda. Moving on to liaison reports. For the borough, I'll give out a report. I don't have anything more to watch report other than just keeping an eye on all of the development that's being talked about in both the borough and the township, and how it impacts the school district, or how it may impact the school district. There's nothing concrete. A lot of it's conceptual. So really just keeping an eye on where some of those redevelopment and new development projects go. I'm kicking it over to the township.
This Saturday is the suicide awareness and mental health walk at 4:30 at Cougar Field. It's hosted on our site. It's open to anybody who would like to come and support.
And that's rain or shine, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. No rain date. Ms. Ciccarelli for the athletic boosters?
Well, I was not there last week, so I can't tell you anything. Were you?
I was not. I didn't know. So I'm off the calendar. I'll have to keep a closer eye. I
'Kay.
apologize.
Anything to report? Mrs. Druhut? Okay.
If there is, just come up.
President Druhut.
If there is, just come up and correct us. We promise to be better attendees. Over to performing arts, Sal?
Yeah, this is a time of year near and dear to my heart. It's marching band season. If you live on Delwood, you hear the block, the rhythmic chiming of that electronic block, which can only mean that these students are out there in the heat, marching, learning their steps. It's a great time of year. I was walking dogs with my daughter returning from college. She heard the blocks. She said, I have to go see. She went in. Everyone said, Mary! It was a great event. So it's marching band season. Every football game, and you should know that there are 3 upcoming competitions. September 29th, there's a Roxbury High School competition. October 6th, Randolph High School competition. And October 13th, Hanover Park. That's it for marching band.
And they just had one this past week, and they came in second.
And they came in second this past weekend. So fantastic. Moving on to performances, auditions have concluded for the fall play Radium Girls, and performances will be on November 16th and 17th. And auditions will take place next week for the middle school musical, The Wizard of Oz, and performances for that will be January 31st, February 1st, and February 2nd.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions for Sal?
Oh, one last thing, just to remind everyone, our athletic boosters are fantastic, and they're thriving, and they have so many volunteers and hardworking people. We have a performing arts boosters, which is pretty fantastic too. They meet on the first Wednesday of the month. If you have time and if you're inclined, please check them out as well, because they do a really splendid job supporting all of our students in performing arts.
And Radium Girls will be the first performance in the new space? That's great. Sal, didn't your son play the male lead in that like 10 years ago?
Yeah, are you trying to say that I'm old?
No, just, hey, I'm happy I remembered. I can't remember what I had for lunch.
Back in the rotation.
I know, I like it. Excellent. Thank you, Sal. Ms. Kenny for Chatham Education Foundation?
Yes, the big announcement is that trivia night is set for November 3rd and will be at Fish and Game and Mountain View. Registration will open on October 4th, and tables will be $600 per table. Just to kind of recap of the contribution that CEF has made to the district, last year CEF granted 19 grants to both teachers and administrators for a total of $105,000, which is up from 17% from the total year. So they make a tremendous contribution to the district, and echoing Sal's request, if anyone has time to help out or attend the CEF meeting, they would appreciate any interest in either giving time and or money. And lastly, they will be featured in the October issue of Chatham Living magazine.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you, Lotta. Mr. Gilfillan, anything for recreation? And PTO District Cabinet has not met yet, have they? Friday, okay. Anything
And
else?
we just discussed the opening of the school, safety and security related issues, transportation a little bit, and that was it.
Do you know when the next meeting is?
I can get it to you.
Perfect, thanks.
Excellent. Very good. We've already passed the minutes for the August 27th meeting, so we have our first opportunity for public commentary. If you could, is there a microphone? Oh,
Yes,
the
over there.
microphone is over here. If you could sign in. Again, this is an opportunity for the public to make any comments or compliments that they may want to throw the board or administration's way. Just a reminder, this is not really an opportunity for a back and forth dialogue. If it's a quick question that we can answer, we certainly try to. But it's really not an opportunity to debate issues, but certainly for you to share your opinions or make comments. If you could just sign in and also introduce yourself.
Over here from when you speak over there.
Way
Yeah.
over there.
That's all I'd say.
We could always move the podium a smidge closer
I know,
than the A wing.
Is it?
I know. Because it's not amplified anymore.
We'll have to work out the kinks.
Well, this is,
Okay, Jane Devlin, Chatham Township. I am not on Facebook or any social media by choice, therefore I cannot comment on specific rumors, but I can thank and support the comments Ann Ciccarelli made, specifically that Facebook is not the best source and certainly shouldn't be the primary source for communication, substituting for attendance at Board of Ed meetings or substituting by appointment meeting with the high school principal or any administrators, all who I have always found to maintain open door policy. I would also like to point out and express, on a different note, frustration that the high school calendar this year does not reflect a break from homework during significant holiday breaks or family times, such as Thanksgiving and Christmas. I plan to explore that further with the principal, Mr. Groh. This is a step back from the last 2 years, and I'm hoping maybe it was just a oversight on the calendar. I would like to go on record at the onset of this school year to please keep a reduction of homework as part of the discussion pertaining to student wellness and also part of the curriculum committee. Besides a reduction, discussion should include how homework that is given can be meaningful and manageable. If not already in place, I would like to suggest parent or volunteer reps on the wellness committee, and maybe even student reps or a member of the student council bringing student ideas to the wellness committee meetings. Thank you very much.
Any additional public commentary?
Robert Patch, Chatham Borough. I came tonight to encourage you to go ahead with the hiring of the Class 3 officers. Give you some of the board members may know my background. For the audience, I'm a disciplinarian at a middle school. I'd rather not say which one because I don't want it to seem like I'm speaking for them. I'm strictly speaking for myself and sharing with you some of my observations and the research I've done. Before I was a disciplinarian in a middle school, education's my second career. I was a fire captain for 25 years. I've been an instructor at the Morris County Police and Fire Academy for over 20 years. I was accepted into the doctoral program at New Jersey City University for Homeland Security. I did 2 years of coursework prior to acceptance and research. Unfortunately, because of some family illnesses, I had to withdraw from the program, but I've continued to do research in the area of school security and active shooters. I'm a member of the school security advisory team in my district, and I am also involved in the Sandy Hook Promise program. I'm a Sandy Hook Promise leader. For a second, take active shooters out of the equation. I'm assuming that the board is intending to use Class 3 officers in the same manner as school resource officers, basically. Take active shooters out of the equation for a second. We have school resource officers at the middle school and the high school in my district. And I can't begin to tell you the things that don't happen because those people are there, okay? I know there's concern. People see law enforcement, and all they see is a patch and a gun. But the students don't see that. These SROs, they're dads. They're the guys shooting baskets when they're not walking around the hallways and checking out the facilities. They're sitting down having lunch with the kids. They're buying the kids, when the kids have fundraisers, they're buying things from the kids. This is a person in the building that they can trust. And I can tell you in the research that I've done, a lot of times students do not come forward with information that can potentially stop disastrous events because they're not sure. I've been on both sides of the fence now. My entire adult life has been devoted to public safety. And I can tell you, as an educator and as somebody in the public safety sector, a lot of times these kids don't come forward because they don't feel that teachers can take the actions that are going to be necessary if they come forward with information. I can tell you that having that school resource officer, he is a trusted asset. These kids are comfortable coming to this person. It's not somebody they run away from. And it's a positive law enforcement experience early in their life. So, in terms of what things that these people do, bullying, screening visitors, medical emergencies, drug use, and discouraging, and actually, that's the word I'm looking for, but preventing drug sales, securing the grounds. If there's I don't know how many times I was pulled out of, when I was a classroom teacher, when I was pulled out of class, hey, there's somebody suspicious outside. Okay, having a school resource officer, somebody who is, and you're getting somebody who has 25 years of law enforcement experience, 25 years of recognizing the signs, subtle signs. I can tell you from the teachers that I teach with, they can recognize overt signs, but a lot of times by that time it's too late. Being able to see these signs in advance, that's part of the Sandy Hook program, recognizing the signs. You've had somebody that's trained in that. And if you're concerned about a police officer carrying a sidearm, I can tell you from my interaction with them, my working with the school resource officer, being part of the security team, that is the last thing that they want to go to. That is the last option and a lot of really bad options. I know police officers who were shot because they didn't go for their weapon, because that was the last option to them, that they didn't want to go to that. They felt that there was some other thing that they could do. Luckily, they were injured, but they weren't killed. That's the mindset of a police officer. Okay? It's not engaging in a Wild West shootout. It's just the opposite. It's doing everything humanly possible, using your knowledge and your experience to avoid that from happening. Okay? But if you are, as I said, a good deal of my research, and it's all been scholarly research, or I've used sources like the FBI, Secret Service, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Education. If you had that kind of an incident, time is of the essence. By having somebody who is trained in emergency response, I can tell you there was an incident in my school, not a shooter. A student was badly injured. The school resource officer was dealing with the nurse and the student who was injured. I went to the front of the building because I had been in emergency services. Normally, a teacher would have gone to the front. They would have walked the EMS through the building. It would have taken 5 minutes. I went to the front of the building, said I was on the job. Bravo side of the building, 200 feet down. Take the path in 80 feet towards the Delta side of the building. Bam, they were in there in 30 seconds. I told them what medical equipment they were going to need. By having somebody inside giving you real-time information, being able to communicate, instead of 5 minutes, it was 4.5. Now imagine if that student had been bleeding. That would have been the difference between life and death. Having somebody in the building that understands what these responders are going to need. You have 2 excellent police departments in the township and the borough, but they're small. There's no getting around it. So getting the resources to the point of the emergency as quickly as possible is imperative. And I can tell you, and again, it's not a knock on any of the staff I've ever worked with. It's not a knock on any of the staff here. You've got big buildings here. Imagine somebody in the back of the building, and you're trying to convey to somebody coming through the front where that is. If you don't have that background, it's going to take a long time. And when you have limited resources, you can't afford that. Also, people who are police officers, firefighters, EMS, when we come on the job, we are screened. We have to go for psychological screening to see how well we'll handle stress. Our training, once we're on the job and while we're on the job, is all predicated on handling stress. That's what we do. Teachers aren't trained in that. They're not supposed to be. But when you have an incident, it could be a natural gas leak. It could be any sort of emergency, short of active shooter. Having somebody in the building who is going to be able to take control, to take command, who is not going to get rattled, I can't put a price tag on that. Okay, this is your my son doesn't go to the Chatham schools anymore. He graduated years ago. So I have no dog in the fight other than I do everything I can. We leave no stone unturned. The district I work for is not an affluent district. And they leave no stone unturned. The student's safety is their priority. Everything else comes second. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would say to you, and I know from emergency services, the worst thing that can ever happen to you, God forbid, if you ever had a situation, would be having to live with the fact that you could have done something and you didn't. And you've got so many other benefits. As I said, take active shooter right off the table. Our school resource officers have been such an asset to the school in so many other ways. I think Mr. Valenti said, last line of defense, absolutely. Because if you're worried about guns being in the school, If there's an active shooter, you're going to have guns in the school. It's just going to be a question of how many people are dead before those guns get in the school. Think about this. The movie shootings in Aurora, Colorado, 70 people shot within 90 seconds. When you can have somebody who is going to be a role model, somebody who has a positive effect on your children, and somebody whose concern is their safety, somebody who would literally take a bullet for them, the price that you're talking about for a Class 3 officer is peanuts. I don't have a kid in the school anymore. I'll be the first one to put my money up and ante up, because I believe I've seen it. I've been on both sides of the fence. I can't impress on you enough that this is a move that makes absolute sense, no matter how you. The problem is sometimes people, they read an article on the internet, and Mr. Valente, you might consider me knowledgeable. You have an expert sitting right there. This is a time when you have to trust the experts, because you read an article here and there on the internet, and people become self-styled experts, and they're not. And this is the lives, children, staff that you're talking about. You have to trust the experts. I wouldn't be up here tonight speaking. I could be sitting at home minding my own business. But I think it's that important. You have to know. Again, I've been on both sides of the fence, and I would not get up here. I have no reason to come up here and tell you something that's not true. And just remember, if you don't do this and something happens, you own it. There'll be no excuses. There'll be no apologies. It's not like the stock market where you can say, oh, well, tomorrow's another day. I've seen, when I was a first responder, I had to respond. When we talk about a Class 3 officer being able to prevent bullying, I've seen what happens. I've seen a 13-year-old take a sawed-off shotgun and blow the back of his head out. I've seen a 14-year-old put his head on a railroad track and wait for a train to come because he was bullied to the point where he just couldn't take it anymore. And I look at how many times our school resource officer has gotten in between that. And I have to say to all of you, if you don't spend the money on the Class 3 officers, I'm sorry if I'm being emphatic here, but I feel this strongly about it. You're being penny wise and pound foolish. And it's not going to be a matter of when if it happens. Eventually, it's going to be a question of when. And as I said, you're going to own it, and that's going to be a terrible thing to go through your life with. I hope you make the right choice and do the right thing.
More on that topic October 1st at the next board meeting.
Good evening. My name is Rosella Clyde. I live in Chatham Borough. I was a New York City educator for 42 years before I came to Chatham. And I worked in New York City during the time that we moved from school resource officers to the NYPD, taking over school security. And so we went from resource officers who are under the auspices of the Board of Education and were answerable to the principal and answered to the administration, and we went to a situation where we had police officers assigned into the schools, and they were responsible to the police departments. And yes, they were trained, and in some cases they were really very, very nice people. And I think that one of the things that happens when you're working with any kind of situation is that if you operate totally out of a situation of fear, you end up making decisions that may not be the best there are for students. I've heard from the discussions here, and I've lived in Chatham for 6 years, and I've been very impressed from what I've heard about everything that's gone on in the schools here. I'm very, very thrilled with the level of professionalism in the schools, and I'm very thrilled with the ways in which the professionals in these schools have responded to challenges and threats. I would encourage you that any decision that you make about the Class 3 officers. And I don't know exactly what you have in mind with it, but that they be school board employees, answerable to you exactly the same way you're laying out everything on the budget. And that please, 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 you include the young people, the students, in your decision making. That you not just go to a student council meeting, but you actually have sounding sessions within the schools about how kids are going to feel about people walking around the corridors of their school with loaded guns. Because I think that there is an intimidating aura. And I have to tell you that immediately after 9/11, when I was living in New York, if I got on a subway and there was an armed police officer or some of these 20-year-old military officers with their guns, I got off the subway. I found guns in the schools intimidating. I know a lot of young people who found them intimidating also. You have to maintain a balance. You have to maintain a balance between the professionals, and I do agree, yes, that there are quite a few very, very well-trained professionals who are first responders who do absolutely wonderful things. But I think you have to look at the total picture, and you have to not lose sight of the fact that you're educating children, and that children learn best in situations where they are not fearful for their lives, where they feel secure in their learning environment. And I've seen that from my interactions with young people here in the 6 years I've lived in Chatham. I would hate to see that situation change because we are afraid, because fear does terrible things to people. Fear does terrible things, and I really, really think that you have human resource department in this school district that is addressing the issues of bullying. I saw it last year in response to some of the other issues that came up when people were trying to bully. Trust your professionals. The police officers are there. I have to tell you, Parkland had 2 armed police officers. They were outside the building. Just because a person has training doesn't mean they're going to necessarily be in the right spot at the necessary time. Yes, it may happen, but chances are pretty good, you saw in Parkland, that it didn't happen. They weren't able to prevent anything. And arming a school with a whole slew of police officers is going to be intimidating to young people. So that's my request. Include the youth in your discussions. Find out their opinions, not just representatives, but have some sounding discussions with them before you commit resources to bringing guns into the schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public commentary for this evening? There's another opportunity at the end as well.
Good evening, Bill Heap, Chatham Borough. Can you hear me, Mary? I was on vacation during the last meeting. I'm sure you missed me. In fact, tonight I went over to the Mountain View School and thought you had all abandoned me. And I forgot the change of venue. Anyway, I am here tonight to present the findings of my summer-long survey on Class 3 officers. A couple of points in that regard. This is completely unscientific. There's no statistical protocol here. I do not have the credentials of the gentleman who was up before. This is best filed under the heading of anecdotal. I made an earnest effort to find out what my neighbors were thinking about Class 3 officers. And I tried to frame the question in a very neutral way. I said the school district is considering hiring Class 3 officers. These are people who are licensed to carry a firearm. Is this a good idea or a bad idea? And then I let people speak. I tried to get a cross-section of people. I went, as I mentioned at a previous meeting, I went to graduation parties. I went to backyard barbecues, 4th of July parade, Charlie's Aunt, checkout line at King's, the farmer's market, Fish and Game. And also, while I was out front of my house doing yard work on Saturdays and Sundays, anybody that came down the street, I would jump out of the shrubs and make them take my survey, whether they liked it or not. And I caught Mike Valenti trying to sneak past my house on several occasions.
I know his answer.
So what did I find out? Well, I found out, and Jill, please don't shoot me, I'm only the messenger on this. Again, most people have no idea this conversation is even taking place. There were some headlines in the paper the last week in August. I think most people were in vacation mode, so I am not sure that they even paid attention to that. It is disheartening to think that in a well-read town like this, that people are woefully uninformed, but that seems to be the way it is. I probably spoke to over 100 people. I found some people in the category of do whatever it takes. They were comfortable with concrete barriers, bulletproof glass, metal detectors, whatever it took to keep their children safe, they were more than comfortable with. There was a subset of that group that was more measured. They said Class 3 officers, if done in the right way, might be a deterrent, and they would be very comfortable with it. I would say they were probably about 20 to 25% of the people I talked to. The majority of people I talked to were not comfortable at all with guns in schools, and that ranged from this idea is completely ridiculous up to people who were sitting on the fence and saying, okay, I would need more information, but I really think this is not a great idea. I talked to students. Students are very anxious, very, very anxious, and it's easy to see why they're anxious. They get a steady diet of nightly news that just shows nothing but car crashes and airplane wrecks and train wrecks and murders and all this kind of stuff. And then, of course, they go onto the internet and see the darkest corners of humanity. And I don't think they're in a position to process this kind of stuff. They don't have the perspective to, and so it piles up, and they are very concerned and have high levels of anxiety from what I can tell. There's also a group in town who are people who transfer in here for business purposes, Canadians, Europeans. They have no idea what this conversation is about and are completely baffled by it and want no part of it. They don't vote, so I guess they don't get a say in this. But it seems to me that if you had a vote tomorrow and you asked whether people wanted guns in schools, I think that they would say no. We calls them like we sees them. That's what I have found out, and I think that from my reading of this, I see that the institutional process is underway. Committees have been appointed. Experts have been summoned. They will render an opinion. They will give you their advice, and maybe you'll shrug your shoulders and say, who are we to disagree with the experts? I think, however, keep in mind that the institution works for you. You don't work for the institution. You don't represent the experts. You represent people in town, and they should have a say in this. I didn't move here to get caught up in unfounded fear and hysteria. I work in Irvington. I know what a failed town is like, and I don't want any part of it. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Heap. Any additional public commentary for tonight? Again, more to follow October 1st. Hopefully all those people that you polled will be here to hear all of the sides. No additional public commentary? Okay, there's another opportunity at the end if something comes to mind. Moving through the agenda, personnel is up front, and again, just a reminder, the agendas are posted around Friday afternoon, so we read them over the weekend, so if anything comes up, you guys have a chance to look at the agenda for a full weekend ahead of time before each meeting. So moving quickly over to personnel, Ms. Kenny?
Yes, I'd like to move action items A1 to A20 for vote.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, there's an agenda, I forgot about that.
20 is the addendum.
Oh, okay.
With the addendum, yeah.
With the addendum, okay.
Any questions for Ms. Grant or Dr. LaSusa on personnel items? No. It's always a busy time of the year for you, Beth. No questions, right or left? Sorry, hard time seeing at this table. Mr. DeQuilla, would you mind?
The addendum item on 820. Mr. Gilfillan? Yes. Mr. Arnick?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Chicarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Valenti? And Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Agenda items passed 9-0.
Excellent, thank you. Moving on to finance and facilities, Mr. Gilfillan?
Yes, I'd like to move action items B1 to 15 on your regular agenda.
Second.
Michael, all these new awards, are those annual awards that we get, or these just found revenue? All these little non-public security aid awards?
The non-public or allotments are all annual
Annual?
from the state. The non-public schools fill out just as the district does the enrollment reports in October, the ASSA reports. The non-publics report those, the districts certify them, and then the state gives the money through us for the non-public schools to use.
Okay.
Any other questions for either Matt or Peter or anybody else on the finance committee? No? Seeing none, Mr. DeQuilla, would you mind?
Through 15. Mr. Gilfillan?
Yes.
Mr. Arnick?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Chicarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan? Mr. Valenti? And Ms. Weber.
Yes.
Agenda items passed 9-0.
Excellent. Moving over to curriculum, Ms. Chicarelli?
I'd like to move agenda items C1 to C5 on your regular agenda, as well as C6 on the addendum.
Second by Mike. Excellent. Ms. Chase, any update on the, any feedback on the ASL class, the sign language class?
Just informal commentary
Informal?
from someone who said that their child is having a great time
Excellent.
in class.
It's a great language. I hope it takes off. Any other questions on curriculum? Nope, seeing none. Peter?
Agenda items C1 to C5 and addendum item C6. Mr. Gilfillan?
Yes.
Mr. Arnick?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Chicarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan? Mr. Valenti? And Ms. Weber.
Yes.
Agenda items passed 9-0.
Excellent. Moving over to policy, Mr. Arnock?
I'd like to move agenda item D1 to D2 for vote.
Second.
Thank you. Dr. LaSusa or Ms. Chase, on item number 1, the harassment, intimidation, bullying, during either back to school night, are we informing the parents, continuously about, some of the HIB laws? It seems that there previously were a lot of reports of things that were not nice, but didn't meet the criteria of the statute for HIB. For example, I could say, Ms. Grant, I think your singing is lousy. It's awful, not nice, but it's really doesn't meet the qualifications for HIB. And in this case, it's very untrue because Ms. Grant happens to be an Emmy Award-winning singer. She's a phenomenal singer, so that's why I sort of picked on her. But we seem to have a lot of reports in years past that, either mostly parents would call up because they weren't quite sure what the statute was about. A lot of it's not nice behavior, more code of conduct, but is there a means to educate the parents with each back-to-school night? Some of the folks are new as they go from school to school, so I'll pause and let you actually answer.
We have not done that at every back-to-school night. We've done it at the middle school from time to time, and I put an advisement in the newsletter that I send out to all parents every September,
Okay.
and ask them to review the policy and so forth. But we don't do an explicit lesson on it at every back-to-school night.
Okay. There's just some confusion on bullying maybe back in the day about inappropriate behavior versus bullying as it applies to the statute as written.
Is this something that possibly we could fold into maybe as guest speakers at PTO meetings or parent presentations at individual schools? So for people who are interested in learning more about the law and what the actual stipulations of the law are and how how our hands are tied in certain situations and how they are, the process by which a HIP investigation is followed through. So that gives people options to learn more if they wish, and it gives us a venue to provide that information.
We can definitely do that.
All right, thank you.
That'd be great.
And on that policy 5512, just as a little very tiny adjustment on the bottom of page 10, last paragraph, first sentence, the word may should be replaced with the word will, as discussed at the policy committee the other night. It's just substituting the word may for will, or will for may.
Okay. Excellent. Does anybody else have any questions on any of the policies or procedures that are up for first and second reading or first reading? Sal, you good to go on that one? Okay, very good. Peter?
Sure, agenda items D1 and D2, with D being altered by Dr. LaSousa. Mr. Gilfillan?
Yes.
I'm sorry, D1 being altered by Dr. LaSousa. Mr. Gilfillan?
Yes.
Mr. Arnick?
Yes.
Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Chigarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan? Mr. Valenti?
Yes.
And Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Agenda items passed 9-0.
Very good, thank you. We have board business at this time. Are there any new or old items that anybody would like to bring up? I do not have anything that wasn't previously covered in one of the agenda items. Going once? Okay, excellent. We have our second opportunity then for public commentary. While folks are queuing up for that opportunity, I just want to double check. Dr. LaSousa, we do not have an executive session tonight, correct? Okay. Just a reminder, we may need a very brief one, either before or after the next meeting, but nothing for tonight. Okay, very good.
Hi, Pam Polameni, Chatham Township. Just to address, Jill, what you were asking about the informing parents about HIB. The middle school, actually, this is the second year in a row that they have forced parents to come to homeroom, and they show on the smart board a nice video. The assistant principal did a wonderful, very entertaining video, actually, this year, which I would suggest putting up on the school district website for all parents to see. I'm down to only having kids in 3 schools now. I would highly recommend that, you know, this video definitely being shown at Lafayette and the middle school, more so than maybe also at the, you know, the high school, for high school parents. But even for maybe the younger kids, it's not as, bullying is different than it is at the in the other grades. But I would suggest putting it up on the website. Having been PTO president in a couple of different schools, you don't get the volume of parents that come to PTO meetings, that you'd probably be better served putting that video up on the school website to get your greatest impact.
Oh, that'd be funny. And a brief public service announcement. Excellent. Any additional public commentary for this evening? Going once? Excellent. Going twice. Well, thank you everybody for coming out. I make a motion to close the public meeting.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Nope. Thank you. We do not have an executive session tonight. Thank you. I think Connor will